On April 28, 2019, a brutal crime shook the quiet community of Westchester, Ohio. 4 family members were systematically executed in their own home. Officers arrived within minutes of neighbors reporting gunshots, but what they found was unsettling. There were no signs of a struggle, no attempt by the perpetrator to cover their tracks. The crime scene was left exactly as it was. Amidst the carnage, one person had survived. Shaken and barely coherent, the sole survivor managed to provide only scattered details of what had happened. But later, they would reveal a full account, one that appeared to explain everything. The only question was, would anyone believe it? Tonight's case is a roller coaster of tragedy and deception. An entire family wiped out. A baffling story from the only survivor, unexpected motives, and courtroom twists no one saw coming. At 9:40 p.m. that night, multiple 911 calls flooded emergency services from the lakefront apartment complex in Westchester. Witnesses reported a man frantically running from door to door, pounding on them in desperation, begging for someone to call the police. Eventually, in a state of sheer panic, he placed the call himself.
911.
Yes, ma'am, listen.
Where are you at? Where are you at? Do you have an address?
Yes, my wife.
What's going on?
My wife wanted to get on.
I'm sorry for what's going on?
My mom.
Did you say your wife?
Yes.
I can't understand you. What's going on?
Please send that.
I will send help, but I need to know what's going on. Can you say it again?
Yes, ma'am, my wife, my family is eating. My wife, my dad, my mom, and my aunt.
They're all down?
Yes, please, hurry, please, hurry.
What? Okay, what happened?
Hello, please, down here.
Have they been shot? Have they been stabbed?
I don't know. Man, please send somebody. I don't know anybody. We can't.
You say you killed them?
No, what are you talking about?
Sir, did you do something to them?
No, I just got home.
Okay.
3-20. Have the caller meet us out front and wave us down if they can.
Several officers from the Westchester PD arrived at the scene, where they found 37-year-old Garrett Singh standing outside his family's apartment. He was waiting for them, his expression a mix of shock and distress.
Let me see your hands.
3-20. We got contact with an individual outside of 4562.
Down on the ground. Down on the ground. Lay on your belly.
I'm gonna step around him.
Please, my wife, please. My family, my wife.
What happened?
I don't know. Everybody bleeding.
Is there anybody else in there except for your family?
No. My wife, everybody.
Hey, Joe. Come up here.
As officers secured Garrett in handcuffs, they couldn't help but notice the blood staining his hands and clothing. Through frantic, incoherent sobs, he tried to explain, saying that upon discovering his wife, he had cradled her in his arms and desperately attempted to give her water.
You're so bloody. How are you so bloody?
I tried to feed the water. No,
3-20, we have 2 individuals down. Full amount of blood. In the front
So
living
how are you
room.
covering so much blood?
I have my wife on my lap. She tried to feed the water. No water.
3-20, clear.
Okay, stay there.
Yes.
Please. Andy, more coverage up here.
I'm not
You got
going
it, go.
anywhere. Please help them.
We got you, we got you.
Please help them. Please help them.
Garrett gradually started sharing the events that led to his frantic 911 call. Upon returning home, he noticed the door to his family's apartment wide open. Stepping inside, he was met with a horrifying sight. All 4 of his adult family members lay motionless, gravely injured and unresponsive.
Did you find the front door open? You did? Okay. And when you walked inside, what happened? What was the first thing you saw? Fire is out.
My mom, my wife, my aunt,
Were they all laying down?
all on the ground.
Laying on the floor?
Yes.
Were they responding at all to you?
I tried.
They weren't breathing.
No one speak.
And then you called us right away.
I call you.
Okay.
I call you.
Did you kneel down and get blood on you? Okay.
Just inside the apartment entrance, officers came upon a grim scene. Garrett's aunt-in-law, 58-year-old Amber G. Carr, lay in the hallway, having suffered 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Only a few feet away, in the kitchen, was his wife, 39-year-old Shallender G., sprawled on the floor. She had been shot 3 times, her arm resting over her head. In the living room, Shallender's mother, Parm, Amarjeet's sister, had collapsed on the floor. She had sustained 4 gunshot wounds to the head, as well as injuries to her finger and right forearm. The most brutal attack was in the bedroom, where Garrett's father-in-law, Hakaka, was found curled up with his arms tucked around him. He had been shot 8 times in the head. A pan of tea had burned on the stove, sending smoke into the air as the detector blared. Forensic teams later determined that 16 rounds had been fired in total, all from a single 9mm handgun. However, the murder weapon was nowhere to be found. There were no attempts to clean up the crime scene, no traces of blood on faucets, sinks, or countertops. Likewise, there were no signs of forced entry into the apartment. Outside, detectives arrived and began piecing together the carnage. Their first focus was on Garrett, who remained in shock. His responses were slow, his demeanor dazed, and his confusion evident as they attempted to question him.
Basically, I got to get information out of you to be able to help everybody involved, okay? So you're very, very important to me right now, okay? And I'm not trying to be rude or anything like that, but the more info I get, the better I can do my job, okay?
Eventually, Garrett managed to explain that he worked as a truck driver. That afternoon, he had left home to check on his semi-truck, only to return later to a horrific scene. As he spoke with detectives, he also mentioned that his friends in America knew him by the name Gary.
It's my understanding you left and then came back.
Fire Charles 93, please.
I left.
Take your time. You don't remember? All right. Was it daylight out or was it dark out? Daylight? Okay.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
Can I see my wife?
Not right now, sir.
It's okay. Okay, please tell me if she's okay.
Is your wife one of the people that's in here? She
My
is
wife,
deceased.
my mom, dad.
Everybody inside is deceased.
What is that?
Dead. Okay? That's why it's very, very important for you to hold together and help me out so we can figure out what happened tonight, okay, Gary? I need you to be strong for me, Gary. Okay?
Garrett was taken to the station for further questioning, where detectives placed him in a soft interview room, one typically used for witnesses and family members rather than suspects. Once they managed to calm him down, he began providing key details about his whereabouts that evening. He explained that he had left home late in the afternoon to work on his semi-truck, which was parked on Mouser Road. He had been fixing a broken taillight and checking the oil levels before making a quick stop at a UDF gas station. After refueling, he headed back home. His 3 children, ages 3, 8, and 11, were not at the apartment that evening. They had gone to have dinner with his cousin, who lived just a few miles from the lakefront apartments. During his time in the interview room, Garrett repeatedly asked to speak with his children, a total of 36 times.
My baby.
Your kids? Yeah. I'm not. We're just gonna hear something, okay? Here's the thing. You call 911. Something bad happened. Okay?
Yeah, they all leave.
I understand. We need to know what happened.
Go to my truck.
Okay. What time did you leave?
I don't remember. I come back. I go back.
Take your time. Take your time.
I see my mom. Yes, I see my mom. And I see my wife. And I see my aunt. They bleed and they all look. And I to shake them, trying to sleep. What happened to them?
It looks like somebody killed them. Why? I don't know. That's why I need your help. That's why I'm walking through this timeline with me so we can figure out where you were, who maybe has a problem with you, or your dad, or your mom, or your aunt, or business partners, somebody at church, an ex-boyfriend. Help me.
So you're saying someone killed my family?
I think so. Why? I don't know. That's why you're here to help me. Who would do this, Gary?
Sir,
I don't help me.
As soon as I know any clue, you will be the first person to know that I'm so bad.
When asked about his relationship with his wife and in-laws, Garrett portrayed a harmonious family life. He explained that in their culture, multi-generational living was common, and he described their household dynamic as peaceful and amicable.
With your folks, with your mom,
Just fine.
good.
Yeah. We lived together since I got here in USA, and nothing wrong, no problem whatsoever.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you guys ever argue or fight more than normal?
Not at all. Not even normal argument. Not at all.
What does your dad run any businesses?
He worked at a factory.
Okay. But before that, did he run a business?
Him and I had a gas station, but that's when they went away.
Did you guys owe anybody money?
No,
From that gas station?
no. My dad did, but it was all paid back.
Your dad did owe somebody money?
Yes, but I know he paid it back. I know, because he sold his land in India.
What about your wife? How's your relationship with her?
Fine, we have 3 kids.
How long have you been married?
2002.
2002?
Yes, long time.
Have you ever separated for any reason?
No, never. Always together. I always. She is a really good mom.
I hate to have to ask you this question. I'm going to. Has your wife ever been unfaithful to you?
Always faithful, no problem.
Okay. Have you ever been unfaithful to your wife?
Always faithful, never problem.
Has your mom and your dad always been faithful?
Never problem. Sir, sorry to interrupt you. It doesn't happen in Punjabi culture.
Okay.
Yes, but if it does, then it won't be cheating. It will be complete separation. It won't be like wife or husband are cheating but still living together. No. If they're together, otherwise
Okay.
Tensions in the interview room rose sharply when detectives asked Garrett to consent to a gunpowder residue test and to surrender his clothing for forensic analysis. At that moment, Garrett became adamant about leaving. Frustrated, he told them, "My family is shot. I want to go to my kids." However, as he attempted to leave, officers stepped in and blocked his way at the doorway.
Tell him everything you wanted to ask me.
Gary, we're going to get
Sir, please.
We are going to get a search warrant for your hand.
Please.
You have to stay here.
Please. No, get your search warrant. Come to me. Do
No,
whatever
you have to stay here.
Why?
Because I said so.
No. No.
We are getting a search warrant.
No.
Yes.
No,
That's how that's going to go.
Okay, go search.
Have a
whatever.
seat.
Why? No, I want my lawyer. I don't want.
Okay, then have a seat.
I don't want to do anything with you.
I understand. Then sit down.
Why? No, I don't want to sit down.
You have to sit down.
Why?
Because I asked you to.
Why
You're not
did I do wrong? Sir, please.
You're going to stay here, and that's final. That's it.
Okay, arrest
As
me.
soon as we get,
Arrest me.
you're under detain. You're in
No,
custody
no,
right now.
no, I don't understand detain or whatever.
Back into the room.
You arrest
Back
me?
into the room.
You
get back in this room.
Look, he told me now that my family was shot. I thought it was an accident.
You thought what was an accident?
4 people died, and you thought it was an
Yes.
accident?
I wasn't told anything.
Because we have to maintain the integrity of any potential evidence that could be on you.
Okay, I'm not giving you anything unless I have my lawyer.
Okay.
Is that clear?
I understand. Have a
That's
seat.
it.
Have a seat.
Yes.
A search warrant was obtained.
A search warrant was quickly obtained, and Garrett was stripped of his blood-stained clothing. He was photographed, and samples were collected from his hands and under his fingernails. He showed visible outrage at the treatment. In total, Garrett remained at the station from 10 p.m. that night until his release at 6 a.m. the following morning.
Hi, good morning. I'm Westchester Police Chief Joel Herzog. I'm here to just give you a little bit of information about the tragic events we had yesterday. At about 9:40 last night, we received a 911 call at 4562 Windtree Drive of 4 people down. Officers responded from the Westchester Police Department along with the Ohio State Highway Patrol. We located 4 people deceased inside from apparent gunshots. The officers cleared the scene and an immediate search of the area began with the Fairfield K-9 and the Ohio State Highway Patrol Air Unit for any suspects.
As investigators interviewed neighbors at the lakefront complex and scoured the surrounding area for evidence, particularly the murder weapon, others close to the family began to provide insight into the victims' backgrounds and how they came to settle in Westchester, Ohio. Jarrett and his extended family hailed from Punjab, a state in northern India. He had grown up in a landowning family until he turned 20, when he was married to Shalander in an arranged union. They moved to the United States soon after. Garrett's father-in-law, Hakaka, had been the first to immigrate, already married to Shalander's mother, Parm. Hakaka initially obtained a Canadian visa before heading to the U.S. with hopes of starting a business operating gas stations. However, his business ventures proved unsuccessful. After his last failed attempt in Kentucky, the family moved to Ohio, where Garrett started his own trucking business. Garrett reportedly spent 70 to 80 hours on the road each week, but his efforts were starting to pay off. By early 2019, Garrett had managed to put a down payment on a newly built 5-bedroom home in Indiana and had begun sponsoring his own parents to come to America. They too were expected to live with him. Despite Garrett's success, members of his extended family, particularly from his wife's side, painted a different picture. Garrett was the primary breadwinner, and finances were a concern. His mother-in-law had recently convinced her widowed sister, Amber G. Carr, to leave India and join them in the U.S. The 2 women worked part-time at a local laundromat folding towels. Meanwhile, Hakaka, still reeling from his business failures, had developed a strong dependence on Johnny Walker Black and struggled with alcoholism. Arguments between him and Garrett were frequent, often leading to tension within the household. Eventually, the patriarch moved out of the extended family home to live in his own apartment. Moreover, Hakaka still held onto valuable land in India, worth an estimated $1 million. In the months leading up to the massacre, Garrett had been pushing him to sell the land so they could access the money. This led to more arguments, with some family members speculating that if Garrett's in-laws were to pass, he would inherit the land through his wife. This theory, according to some, provided Garrett with a potential motive for the killings. News of the murders sent shockwaves through the local Sikh community, a faith rooted in principles of equality and selfless service to humanity.
It's definitely sad. It's a tragedy for the entire community. But I would definitely say that this doesn't reflect who we are as a community.
Shalander G is remembered as a kind and loving friend, as well as a devoted mother. Her aunt, Amber G. Carr, was equally cherished, having raised 2 sons on her own after the death of her husband. Family members described her as soft-spoken and gentle, a woman who was deeply loved by all who knew her. Parm G., Shalander's mother, was seen by her family as an adoring grandmother who had a passion for sharing stories from Punjabi mythology and history. Her tales captivated those around her, keeping the cultural heritage alive. The loss of these beloved family members was profoundly felt by their relatives, including Parm's brother, Ajav Singh SP, who spoke emotionally about the deep pain their family was now enduring.
It was my blood, I feel like, if it was outside in the street, I could, punch his face or do something worse.
On July 2nd, 2019, Garrett was arrested at a Walmart in Bradford, Connecticut, where he had traveled for a family wedding. The results from the gunshot residue, GSR, test on his hands had come back positive. He spent a month in New Haven jail before being extradited to Ohio, where he would face trial for the murders.
Come! Walk in! Walk in! Walk in!
Police eventually recovered the weapon used in the killings after being directed to search the lake behind the apartments. A witness had reported hearing loud bangs, which they later recognized as gunshots, around 9:15 p.m., followed shortly by the sound of a splash. The gun retrieved from the water was the 9mm handgun that investigators had been searching for. However, the serial number had been removed. Garrett Singh hired attorneys from the Richer & Richer law firm and went to trial in October 2022. He faced the possibility of the death sentence if convicted. During opening statements, the defense introduced a surprising new theory, one that seemed to come out of nowhere. Defense attorney Charlie Rickers suggested that the murders were the work of the Indian land mafia. He claimed that Garrett's father-in-law had accumulated a massive amount of debt while still living in India, forcing him to use his land to settle his financial troubles. The details surrounding the land deal Hakaka had entered into were vague, but it was claimed that he had made an arrangement with two shady individuals, Kip Sakhan and Shabazz Nagra. Sakhan was wanted by both the FBI and Interpol, and Nagra was reported to be in the Cincinnati area at the time of the murders. The defense argued that Hakaka had become financially entangled with these dangerous figures, and that it was far more likely that they were responsible for the killings. Meanwhile, the defense also questioned Garrett's financial motive. According to Garrett's family, he was set to inherit land from his parents, in addition to owning a trucking business valued at $250,000, a truck and trailers, as well as a $300,000 home in Indiana. Rickers told the jury that Garrett had already returned home when three masked men broke into the apartment with baseball bats. He ran from the scene to escape, and when he came back, everyone was dead. The defense suggested that the murders were committed by more than one person, especially since 4 adults were killed in separate rooms with 2 exits. However, this was the first time anyone had heard of these armed, masked men. Through hours of questioning, both at the scene and later at the station, Garrett had never mentioned these mysterious attackers.
Mention any law enforcement officer that you are aware of. This story we've heard from defense counsel about 3 unknown attackers breaking into his house, armed with baseball bats, chasing him out of the house, threatening him to not tell the police at any point in time.
No, sir.
Neighbors testified that they likely heard gunshots around 9:15 p.m. Meanwhile, cell phone data, GPS tracking from Garrett's vehicle, and surveillance footage placed him traveling home just after 9 p.m. At 9:05, he was captured at a gas station about 2 miles from Lakefront Apartments. During this stop, he spoke with his cousin, who was looking after his 3 children, and instructed him not to bring them to the apartment. He said he would pick them up on his way home after checking on his truck. However, Garrett did not pick up his children as promised. Instead, he drove directly to the apartment complex, arriving at his door at 9:11 p.m.
The vehicle recorded began at 9:05 and 13 seconds and ended at 9:09 and 40 seconds. That is the last recorded breadcrumb.
The shots were heard by several witnesses shortly before Garrett's 911 call, which was placed at 9:40 p.m., a full half hour after he had returned home. This raised suspicions. Either Garrett was the shooter, or, as his defense later suggested, he was hiding from the Indian mafia. Experts hired by Garrett's attorneys argued that gunshot residue would naturally be found on his hands, given that he had touched the victims, including holding his deceased wife in his arms.
If there was a victim shot at close range to the head, based on your knowledge of GSR, that victim's hair would have GSR throughout, correct?
Yes.
And so if an individual grabbed the victim by the head or hair, we would expect that individual to have GSR on his hands, right?
Correct.
And with secondary transfer, if you touch your hands together, it can transfer from one hand to the next, right?
Yes, it can.
Garrett's bloody clothing was also analyzed by forensic experts, who discovered that not all of the stains were transferred. Notably, a spatter stain was found on the back of his red shirt, which could not have been acquired after the murder, but only during it. However, the defense argued that if Garrett had been the shooter, the stains would have been on the front of his shirt, not the back. They claimed that this detail, along with other physical evidence, created reasonable doubt about Garrett's involvement. The defense's expert testified that the absence of spatter on the front of Garrett's shirt suggested he was not the shooter. They further pointed out that the only blood on Garrett was from his wife, not from all 4 victims.
What, if any, conclusion or significance is there that in that BCI DNA report, Parmji, Amarji, and Hakikat's DNA was not found on Dupree or his clothing?
Well, again, sir, I just told you with respect to Parmji and Hakikat, mainly those shots were from very close range. So I think it would be impossible for a shooter to make those shots with having some blood spatter back on them as well. In my opinion, I think it'd be impossible for a shooter to come in here and shoot 4 people and only have one person's DNA, and that can be accounted for by him holding his wife because he found her.
Rickers further argued that although the murder weapon had been recovered, there was no evidence linking it directly to Garrett Singh. He also suggested that Garrett's motives may not have been purely financial. In March 2019, just a month before Shalinder G's death, she had discovered a $20,000 check made out to a woman named Neve Kiran. Shalinder knew Neve, as she was the ex-wife of another truck driver. Neve had gone through an ugly divorce from her abusive husband, who sold their house for $1 to a cousin. Neve needed funds to repurchase the house, and Garrett had reportedly helped her with a deposit. He had even provided her with a new car to drive. Witnesses testified that Shalinder had confronted her husband about the money shortly before her death. Garrett acknowledged providing the funds, but refused to disclose who Neve Kiran was to him. Shalinder, feeling betrayed, was further hurt when she found out that Neve lived in the same subdivision in Indiana, where Garrett and Shalinder were building their new home.
I did not want a divorce, but my ex-husband sold this house or transferred this house to my cousin for $1.
And while that divorce was going on, did you turn to the defendant for help?
Yes, I did.
Now, as this divorce is going on, and the nature of your relationship with completely changed. What I mean by that is, did it become romantic?
Yes.
At that time, did you know that the defendant was married?
Yes.
Did the two of you begin, that being you and the defendant, a sexual relationship?
After my divorce.
During the time period that your relationship with the defendant was romantic, he was helping you with the mortgage, giving you the car, did the two of you ever discuss getting married?
When I got divorced, at one time, he did ask me, what is your plan?
So the defendant asked you if he had been single, would you consider marrying him?
Yes. And I said, if my parents agreed, then I would.
In their closing arguments, the prosecution urged the jury to see past the implausible theory put forward by the defense and to hold Garrett Singh accountable for the brutal murder of his family.
5 people are alive in an apartment, and 30 minutes later, 4 of them are dead, and only 1 person remains. And that person has gunshot residue covering both of their hands. And that person lies to the police about when they arrived at the crime scene and everything else. They ask you, they beg you, they're pleading you. Hold their killer accountable.
His excesses with his mistress are hurting his finances. He's paying for her house. He's paying for her car. He's paying for her insurance. He's spending $2,000 a month on it. While at the same time, trying to maintain his own family's lifestyle of paying rent on their apartment, gas, his truck. And not only that, he buys a house in the same neighborhood. He's paying for that. At any point in time, this defendant could have told this fantasy of unknown attackers. He said nothing about the things that his lawyer now claims.
The defense highlighted witness testimony that described a hooded figure running from the scene that night, heading toward the tree line of the apartment complex property.
The person was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, hooded, and was running with one arm, cradling the front pockets of the hooded sweatshirt. That's what you described to the police. Into this southwest tree line. Before the police arrived.
The defense also emphasized what they claimed were gaps in the case against their client. While friends had mentioned tensions between Hakaka and Garrett, there was no evidence of angry messages or communication between Garrett and his family. No incriminating internet searches had been found, such as ones related to the murder, acquiring a weapon, or cleaning up the crime scene. Furthermore, there were no follow-up messages to his mistress. He didn't reach out to her with any indication that they could now be together.
"25 electronic devices are searched, including Dupree's cell phone, all of the victim's cell phone, text messages, emails, photographs. No indication whatsoever. In fact, the contrary, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, that Dupree was planning to, that he was violent at any point. Nothing. The land dispute. We do know, and witnesses did testify to this, that there was a land dispute. And you want to talk about money? May 7th, the detective and other Westchester police officers received an email from Harmjeet's brother, Ajay, that talked about Aldeep Saikar and Shabazz Nagar. And in that is the first time, apparently, the government heard of landmine, which a simple Google search will tell us that there is a Punjab mafia in India related to land.
The defense called just one witness to the stand, a forensic expert, in contrast to the 41 individuals who testified for the prosecution. Evidence was presented over the course of 10 days. Garrett Singh chose not to testify on his behalf. After the first day of deliberations, which lasted 14 hours, the jury was still unable to reach a verdict. They asked to review the transcript of the state's blood expert's testimony, but Judge Greg Howard denied the request, emphasizing that jurors should rely on their own memories of the proceedings. As deliberations continued, tensions flared. Jurors 111 and 83 reportedly had a heated argument, with Juror 83 even sending a letter to the judge requesting their removal. In the letter, they claimed to have been insulted and ignored, calling the treatment ignorant and stupid, and stated they no longer felt safe in the deliberation room. Once again, Judge Howard denied the request. When the jury returned to court, they were deadlocked. 11 votes for conviction and 1 vote for acquittal from the juror who had asked to be removed.
She told us the first day of deliberation that she's not budging.
The very first day
of deliberation. I think she came in with a conclusion and she was not willing to budge on her opinion. I think her conclusion was set before trial.
I feel bad. I feel ashamed, that we didn't give their family some kind of closure on this. It's been 3 years and now we got to wait for another year probably for a trial. So. He was covered in blood. It's a bloodbath. So, it's obvious. It's 4 dead people. He's sitting there. Whose other blood could it be?
Prosecutor Michael Moser announced his decision to retry the case, voicing his frustration with Judge Howard for denying the jurors access to the transcript and for not replacing the 2 jurors who were involved in the argument. Moser accused the judge of deliberately creating the conditions for a mistrial and demanded that Judge Howard recuse himself from the case.
There are only 4 words to describe my decision to move forward with another trial, and those 4 words are yes and hell yes. There will be a request by me upon the judge to recuse himself from the next trial, and upon that refusal, I will seek a recusal from the Supreme Court.
A request for recusal by Judge Howard was ultimately denied, though he would not be the sole judge overseeing the retrial. For the second trial, Garrett Singh's defense team asked for a bench trial, as he was facing the death penalty. His fate would be determined by 3 judges from Butler County, including Judge Howard. However, there was a significant change. Over the years of fighting the case, the $300,000 in home equity and $250,000 from his business, along with other funds, had been depleted. Garrett was declared indigent and appointed a public defender. When the retrial began in the spring of 2024, his new legal team introduced a completely different defense. Gone was the story of 3 masked men with baseball bats who had chased him away. Instead, the defense argued that Garrett had been present during the murders and had been intentionally left alive to be blamed for the killings.
Who had the opportunity and who was actually physically present in that apartment.
While he was there, he did not pull the trigger. He could not have been the shooter, and the background proves that someone else orchestrated this crime.
Once again, the defense called just one witness, the neighbor who had heard the gunshots and later reported seeing a hooded figure running towards the trees, though the exact time of this sighting was unclear. After less than 3 hours of deliberation, the 3-judge panel reached a unanimous verdict: guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder. Their decision on the appropriate sentence was also unanimous.
We, the 3-judge panel, do hereby unanimously find that the aggravating circumstance that the defendant was found guilty of committing does outweigh the mitigating factors presented in this case by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We therefore unanimously find that the sentence of death should be imposed upon Gurpreet Singh under count 1 of the indictment.
As part of the sentencing process, an execution date of November 27, 2024 was set. However, due to the automatic appeals process, this date is not considered realistic. Garrett Singh, now 42 years old, is currently incarcerated at Ross Correctional Institution. His parents' application to immigrate to the United States was denied due to their sponsor being a convicted murderer. His 3 children have since moved to California, where they are being cared for by relatives of their late mother.